Go ahead. Jonathan, get started. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to call to order the Culture, Climate, and Behavior Committee meeting on Wednesday, September 18th, 2024 at 6:34 p.m. at the boardroom of OPRF High School. Please call the roll, Lisa.
Ms. Alexander.
Present.
Dr. Applewhite.
Present.
Mr. Brenhorst.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Ms. Emerson.
Here.
Ms. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. Janney. Ms. Jones. Ms. Lamb. Dr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Moran.
Present.
Ms. Newman. Ms. Parker.
Present.
Ms. Scriber. Ms. Stevens.
Present.
And we also have Mr. Caraballo. I keep missing his name.
Spell it out.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Walpole.
Present.
Okay, do you have any public comments?
No, for tonight.
Okay. Then, let's see, we will move to, approval of minutes. I move to approve the April 17th, 2024 Culture, Climate, and Behavior Committee meeting minutes as presented. Are there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made?
So Alexander, did you second? Thanks.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Right, and we will move on to discussion of items. A, disruptive behavior.
So good evening, everyone. Tonight, I want to first say thank you to everyone who's joining us again for CCD. We also have visitors who are here observing CCD today because they may be interested in joining. And so they are going to be part of the exercises we do today. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves just by name and tell us if they're student, community, or parent. And then I will explain what we're going to do in terms of the work for today. One of the things I would say is that from last year's meetings, we spoke a lot about how when we broke up into smaller groups, it was very helpful for everyone to kind of discuss topics. But I also heard individuals say that they wanted to put the CCD's voice in the way we do things, like once we get to the point of approving our behavior education plan for the next year, that they want to have a little bit more input and voice into that. So we are going to do some exercises while we're in, not physical exercise, but mental exercise in here while we are trying to kind of dissect topics that happen within our school. And one of the things you're going to hear us talking about is kind of challenging each and every one of us in this space to see things as at a larger degree. So kind of taking a overarching view of how we handle things. And so there will be a lot of discussion involved in that, but then also us challenging and then coming back together in order for us to see what we can do in terms of moving the work that we do within our school forward. So one of the things I'm going to stop and do first is I want the people in our audience to introduce themselves so we can have the mic to them.
Mr. President, before we start, I just want to do Ms. Lamb and Ms. Jones. President.
And just give us your name and then let us know if you are a student. If you're a student, tell student here in school, parent or community member.
Sorry, Mohammed, I'm a junior.
Patients are keys. Community.
Dylan Pierce, I'm a senior.
Here, OPRF.
My name is Alara and I'm a senior at OPRF as well.
Well, Cassell, parent, 2 students, a senior and junior.
Leslie Stephenshaw, parent of a junior.
Thank you all so much for joining us. And also look at all of our students. I'm so excited. So I'm truly interested in us starting this discussion in conversation with our board members who are always here with us for CCD. we talked about different topics that were kind of like central to concerns that have been raised at the school. So each month, we're going to bring a topic from that basket. And tonight's topic, as you saw on our agenda, was our behavior, some of our disruptive behaviors that are within the school. So we are going to be taking a look at some scenarios, and we're going to be asking you to frame your discussions around the following. We are seeking to not just address behaviors with our BEP, we're also looking to change behavior. So we're looking as an education facility on how we can always insert education that helps to change the minds and choices of students so that it's directed in a more productive behavior for them and for their future, okay? So that's one thing we want you to think about. And we want you to think with us about how we can do this on a larger scale, okay? The BEP, as you know, is a responsive document, and it responds to individual infractions and things that students do. We want to talk about, is there a possibility that we could even prevent, if we were so worthy to dream, that we could actually prevent some things from happening and occurring at all with things that we could do ahead of time in order to be proactive to that work. And then also just to realize that in order for children to change, adults also have to change, because students are typically modeling what they see and what they hear. And so we have to be very careful about what we're putting in front of them in terms of actions as we do things. So as we do this, I'm going to just planting your seed, and you'll hear more about this a little later, based off of comments that students made on the Illinois Youth Survey and on our panoramic school climate survey. We introduced this year amongst our faculty and staff our developmental relationships framework, because we truly do believe all of this work surrounds itself around forming relationships with students. And so tonight you're going to hear a lot and be asked a lot about how we do restorative action and what that restorative action needs to look like in order for it to be effective for our groups. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to have you do is you're going to count off by 5. Okay, and I'm going to start over here, and then I'll point when it gets to you all, because we're going to all just take a number 1 through 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2,
3.
5, 1, 2,
3,
5,
1,
2, 3,
4.
Perfect. Okay, and then I'm going to split you up. Once you get into your circles, I need you to give me a moment, and I'm going to explain what you're going to do with your scenario. Actually, I'll do it now, because I know once we get there, we get excited to get started. Okay, so everyone is going to be presented in your group, same scenario, okay? And these are real life things that happen within our school, okay? So you're reading them, and what I want you to do is to think about what I just planted in terms of things that we're doing. Know automatically that our BEP addresses behavior as it happens. So there's always a BEP response. What I'm trying to get us to dig in a little bit more to is what type of restorative work could be done that's going to accomplish what we just talked about, which is changing students. Something happens, and I want you to think about what could we have done, or what can we do now retroactively to think about how we can make some changes to our students in terms of the choices that they are making. And there are 3 things to keep in mind. I will read these again after you are in your group so that you can remember them as you're there, okay? The first thing you're going to think about together is who was impacted in this scenario? The collective who was impacted. The second thing, what are the root causes of the behavior or the incident as you just read, okay? So root causes to that behavior or cause to that incident. And then C, what actions might the adults in this space take to not only restore those things that harm the people of the culture, but also ensure that the incident has less of a chance to occur again. Okay, I will read those again once you get in your groups, but I want you to let that sit in, okay? So here's how we're gonna split up, and we are gonna use the middle just because it's a great seating area for our groups. I'm gonna have group 1 come inside our circle and take these seats here. Group 1, and you're okay moving the chairs, just make sure we move them back for the end, okay? Group two, I'm gonna have you actually in this area here. So group two, right here. Group three on this end. Group four, right here. And then group five, I want you to, if I can get four to be, okay, group five will be out here. Okay? Everybody get the one, so one is inside, two.
Who's over there?
Who's over there?
Who's right there? Three's right there. Four.
Okay, what I said, do that. And five, I just know one is inside, five is outside. 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here.
Hello. Wow.
That's two. Four is right there. Four is right there. No.
Okay.
It's okay, just keep it secret. Watch it.
Look at.
It's just probably, yeah.
We have another.
She left it right here, yep, because they need an extra person, that rounds it out great.
Done this before.
Make sure you do not sit in your circle without making sure you know each other's names. Names are important, you have to know who you're talking to. And then I'm going to just say in what you're bringing out. Like Ambria. So this first part of this. Who was impacted
Hold on.
by the scenario? Who was impacted?
Wow.
Second, what are the root causes of the behavior or the mistake?
So my name?
Who was impacted? And then what are the root causes of that behavior and incident? And then the third
Are
thing,
you seeing-
what actions might the adults in the space? What could they do to not only restore those things that were harmed, either the people or the culture, but also ensure that the incident has less of a chance to occur again? Just a disclaimer, there are some of these that have some very tough situation on it and very tough words as you read them. Understand that we're just grappling with tough subjects, so I don't want anyone to be offended by anything they read on the paper, okay? And just know that there are some tough subjects in there. You're gonna have 10 minutes, we will start with timer and also give you a warning or it's coming down short. Okay? Feel free to ask myself or Mr. Green if you don't remember our greetings. We'll come back.
What can we do differently so that it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, we want to have Ms. Parker to see if you're.
Should I come from five?
Susan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Some students go.
Okay, so who would? 5 years. And that's what
For the two girls. The onlookers are impacted in a certain way. They don't know what's going to happen. So they may, they're impacted in the adults who have. It's also a whole lot of mixing in insurance. Like at least.
I'm struggling with the health student with college. I don't know why they're having to bring that into it.
maybe about like.
And there's always this.
Can I have that? Yeah, and like how people view them, you know, like people might view them a certain way because they ask to yeah, I like so if it's in an argument, maybe people would like view it, and so I think that it does like change situations and like how people like students.
That's part of the problem.
Yes, I agree.
That's cause.
Yes.
When you have your. I think a lot of people have this.
Boy. The boy is impacted somewhat.
I think unfortunately in these situations. My wife's a teacher at the middle school and she said that something like this happened. And the boy was just like, he reported the altercations and posted it on his social media because it was like. And
It's ego enhanced. Okay, so root causes. So does anybody have any additional people to say?
I mean, I think that, I mean, my kids talk a lot about that there's like single bikes, especially on the third floor. So I think that like that sort of reinforces ego, if it doesn't escalate to a physical altercation. Like there's probably like a safety. If you say to that.
We have any word of it. So it's not even. Right, it's gonna spread.
And some of the root causes is that like the people that are in the fight, the people that are kind of encouraging it a little bit, they really need to get structure in the school. They think it's gonna be like. As well.
Pause.
I would say, do I have a board? I don't. And just access to but having access to phone, or social media during school hours. Because you're looking for that, I think it's kind of, having been in this environment before, you're looking for social interaction throughout the day, not just lunch or gym. There's some of that can. Sonia? Sonia. Wow. I got on my wallet, but I can't get it.
Just think like a sauna.
Sonia. Okay. But those are the two processes. I just haven't access. I had access. Thompson is talking to someone, because I'm sure one of the young ladies had already thought, I don't want to really argue over this person. I really don't want to get this other person. If they have, then those behaviors, in my opinion, would have been reflected at some point in the classroom. Whether that's behavior, or answers, getting ready to get out of class too fast. There's, I feel like, you say, okay, what else going on? Not attention. But if they adults interested, I'm also thinking when you see things, instead of just thinking, well, the kids should have the tools to figure it out themselves. No offense, I think they should adults should get that in the time. See something happening, rather than hearing conversation, you hear the wisdom in the hallway, and interjecting yourself before even escalating. So those are the process.
A lot of you pause and intervention issues, it's like pause, I think is why are there. It's hard to know.
That's like a social side.
Then level cause.
I'm thinking about. I'm gonna marry you on
I mean, we actually read this, I think. It's not actually clear if they're both dating. They're dating, right? So like, I think that kind of goes back to a little bit you're saying about like the social media accessibility is that Instead of arguing with each other, you conversation go to the boy and say, "Who you dating?" And just clear it up. Like, I mean, I've never understood why there was like a conflict between someone, the boy, seems to be the most wrong here, he's dating the same child, but like, why they would ever be amongst each other, just pointing in.
Generations. No, that's how it gets handled. I don't know.
Well, right, but like, why would you, like, to me, like, right, the girls had nothing to do with it, right? Like, it's the guy who's like, if they didn't know about each other before, then it's really the boy's issue. And so like, why sort of like create drama around it?
Why is it? Also because of wide problems.
Really cool. Honestly, like, it says. This is actually already found.
They're not excited with their curriculum or classroom experience. I think it still comes down to the social interaction. There's a lot of children in this working, can't help but try to, connect with somebody. And
You have 2 minutes left. One thing to keep in mind is I will be asking each group to give me one of their letter C of your action. So in these last 2 minutes, decide which your one action is going to be that you'll share out from your scenario. You have under 2 minutes for me.
The idea was this.
I would have said my thought.
because, and I think you're my thought.
Too.
As soon as they bring in the cafeteria, I would let everyone else go, everyone else out. Again, so we know.
So there's sort of a mediation here.
Well, when I was here. Bring it back.
I mean, I was a peer mediator in my high school, and I thought it was one of the most effective ways for resolving conflicts, right? Like it was student led, you would come in, you would have a dialogue, this is what's going on, and like you would try to work it out. Student, adults are trying to get involved at all. Not to say like the females and the males, but like somebody who's sort of like an interest.
Yeah. We talked about that last year. I think, yeah.
No peer mediation here, not anymore.
Okay, what are you bummed about?
Every time we have like a kind of talk where they don't just like come in.
Begin to wrap up, you have 6 seconds left.
I know we came up.
Putting up, you two can definitely hop in
And we're coming back together.
Boom.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call out the group numbers and what I'm looking for you to do. Make sure you have your seat. One person from the group, I need you to give us a quick summary of your scenario so people know what you're speaking of.
Sure.
And then I need you to give us your action. I know you have more than one, but we're looking for one of the actions you spoke about is that an adult might do from this space to not only restore those who were harmed, but also ensure that the incident has less of a chance to occur. Because I like to switch it up, I'm gonna start with group 5 first.
So our scenario is, in Halls, students are commenting about LGBTQ kids are taking over the world. And nobody cares about these stupid pronouns. And some students overhear this, get into a verbal confrontation that gets a little physical, but it's broken up before anything crazy happens by campus safety staff. And what we talked about a lot was kind of the learning experience from this for those that say these kinds of things. Because they're kids, I don't think they fully understand that their words have impact and what it is like to be, I can't say what it is like to be, but how it can, how being from a minority community like the LGBTQ community can be when you're challenged, when your existence is consistently challenged, who you are challenged in the media, on social media, everywhere. And I'm an advocate for one, not having the students that were harmed in this situation be the ones who then have to front load the teaching experience of why this is bad for them, because that's just more pain. So I think it's on us as adults. Like when I hear things like this from my students or in the hallway, I shut it down really quick. And if there's students in my room, I have a conversation with them about it, giving them lessons on why these phrases are bad. You brought up the historical nature of this idea of taking over the world is a common trope that's come through in history about many different kinds of people. But also the idea that like pronouns don't matter. And it's very simple lesson of, okay, pronouns don't matter, I'm going to call you your opposite pronoun. And I'm going to do that forever because they don't. Because they don't matter to you, right? And it's a very quick lesson for them to go, oh wait, no, it actually does matter to me. So to have someone, to call someone out of their name or their pronoun, it's easy for them to see. They're kids, they're teenagers, they don't have their full frontal lobe, they don't have the empathy that maybe is necessary for them to be around this many people at their age. So it's a quick empathy lesson of
Led by the adults.
yeah, led by
Led by
an adult.
adults, not necessarily those
Yeah.
directly affected.
Yeah, you don't have to, because that's not their job.
Got it.
It's not a minority or express group job to teach other people about how to be a better person.
Thank you. Thank you, group 5. Group 4.
Our topic was about a substitute teacher, because he has asked for the phones to be stored in the phone hall, and I'm supposed to, and there was one student who kept the phone and, got playing games on it.
She's in.
Was asked multiple times, still does not comply, so am I going to the room or the room?
No, just that summary so they know, and then just tell us give us one of your actions. She said that.
The sub could pull the student aside, and check in quietly to see what is happening and why they're refusing, because there could be a good reason, it could be there's something going on, it could be they're looking to be in contact with somebody. But they can have that conversation and then ask them again to put the phone up, and it still doesn't fit the teacher. The teacher can manage.
So the substitute teacher would address the situation and see if there's something else at work. I heard one of your members say, dig deeper to find out if there's something actually going on with the child. Thank you, group 4. Group 3.
Our problems was about a student who in class kept getting out of their seat and causing disruption in the class, kind of taking others away from the actual learning going on. And the teacher continuously asked the student to sit down. The student responds, I got you, but he never complies. And this is not the first time that the behavior had been exhibited in the class. We kind of had like a multifaceted approach to this, and in the first meeting, like I feel like the teacher should talk to the student one-on-one, or maybe send an email being like, maybe we should go over what I expect from you as a student, and that you need to listen because you're causing disruption to the class. And we decided that if that doesn't happen, if the student doesn't comply, maybe getting the student's counselor, social worker, dean involved, and to kind of have a fully supported conversation about what factors might be going on at home to make this happen, or not even at home, but even in the class with different groups of people. I mean, with different things that might just affect them outside of the classroom. And the last kind of meeting I think we decided was having peers also involved. At first, I didn't think that peers should be involved just because the student should, it might not make the student think it's as serious. They might be trying to impress their peers rather than respect the teacher and really listen. So we took that as like a last kind of resort within these personal meetings.
Very good. So you're saying the teacher is taking the initiative in your first action, which was to send an email and to speak to the students, and then also get involved other admin in the building, like deans or counselors or so, if there seems to be a larger problem. Yes. Within there. Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Group 2.
So, for our group, we had a pretty, pertinent topic. In a classroom, the class is discussing, it's a history class, and it's discussing current conflicts around the world. And one student says, it's just a tragedy that the US is okay with funding the murder of innocent Palestinians. And then a Jewish student reported the interaction, as an anti-Semitic comment. And one thing that we talked about was, first of all, how complicated this is, because nothing will be solved here or here out, no matter what anyone does. And then we also talked about the harm that was just happening over the past year on both sides, and the pain that everyone's been feeling on both sides. And we landed on having the teacher, the adult in the room, providing a qualifier that before this discussion occurred, that, we'll be talking about topics that are uncomfortable and might make you angry, but we're still going to discuss current events. So here's a qualifier that, and it's kind of almost what we talked about at the last meeting too, about having a brave space and having a respectful space too. So we were, landed on the whole idea of a qualifier would maybe help everyone. And we talked about the word trigger warning, and we moved away from that.
So the teacher provided the entire class with a qualifier to what the discussion would be, so that everyone would be ready for where they were headed. Thank you. Thank you very much. And then our final group 1.
Okay, so in our scenario, two female students of color get into a heated exchange about a boy after reading messages on social media. The exchange begins in the cafeteria, it carries into the passing period. It does not escalate into altercation, but it does require adult intervention to dissipate. And so our conversation, kind of summarize the solution here, the action would be to have a peer mediation group add adult supervision, obviously, and this is what I mean. Peer mediation is having a third non-biased or unbiased party come in to solve that immediate situation, but to have an adult present for things that maybe they cannot handle or that they're not trained for. And I've said that this should have happened in that transitional period from the cafeteria to the hallway. There's a lot of children in this building, and energy equals momentum. So 2 becomes 3 is 9, 81. Now you're in the hallway trying to break a greater number of students. And one other quick thing, intervention to dissipate instead intervention to resolve. Breaking up the students is a great first step. However, I'm gonna see you next period. So trying to stop that cycle and getting students to redirect their focus back into why they're here and that's to get their education. So to focus in on the classroom and not bringing it from the cafeteria to the rest of the school day.
All right. Thank you guys for that engaging dialogue. I'm going to pause for a minute. We're going to talk whole group. But be prepared because you're going to go back into your small groups around the same scenarios. But what Linda and I wanted to do was kind of frame this in a larger context than we have in the past. So for those of you that have been part of CCD, last school year, we spent some time at the end of the year discussing how that behavior education plan can be used to respond to behavior incidents such as the ones that you just discussed. So welcome to the world of being a dean. This is what it's like. This is why we have 5 of them. It's very much like whack-a-mole. Situation pops up and then you have to do something to fix it. And then another situation pops up. And very often the same exact situation can pop up within a school of 3,500 students over and over and over again. We could be talking about a verbal dispute, we could be talking about a discrimination complaint, and it just happens over and over again. And the deans very often feel like they are just running around and putting out fires. So the question comes up is, how does our behavior education plan help us to get more to the root of the problem in a large community like this? Believe it or not, there's a lot of information in the behavior education plan that a lot of people just skip over. We go right to that grid because the grid tells you if a student did this, then these are your available options, and this is what should fix it. And again, in those individual situations, that does work in most cases. We have great success with students not repeating the same behaviors. Doesn't do anything to fix the overarching problem of a culture shift in our school. If you go to the beginning of the behavior education plan, and we talked about this when we did our interview last year, there are a lot of proactive things that we can do as a school community to help educate students before they get into these situations. So everything that every group said, was writing down as you said, yes, those are absolutely great responses that you came up with individually to help those individual students. But the question now is going to be, how can we change the culture of whatever space those students were in? Some of them are in classrooms, some of them were in a hallway, some of them are individual situations. How do we change that culture so that we have a larger impact than just those students that were involved? And Linda and I want to share with you one idea that we brought to teachers at the beginning of the school year. A small group of students during the PD session, not students, teachers during the PD session, maybe a classroom of about 25 teachers. And it's research based. If you can grab the book for me, it's over there in the chair. The book is called Better Than Characteristics. And the idea is that consequences and rewards do not work in classrooms or in any space where you have a group. It just temporarily fixes the problem, like the pop-up or the whack-a-mole. What does work is building an actual community in that space where we are learning together. And that does not only go for math, science, English, history, etc. We are learning, in some cases, we're learning how to learn. We're learning how the other people in this space learn. We're learning preferences. We're learning about things that irritate people when they're in a classroom. Some people are okay with a lot of movement. Some people are not. Some people are okay with loud noises. Some people need it to be really quiet. How can we accommodate a bunch of different learners in the same room and prevent conflict and still keep the learning process going? The answer, or one of the answers, suggestion, is something called circles. It's something that we have employed here in this group very often. So the book presents, among many other topics in the book, I don't want to give you the impression that the book is only about circles, it's not. But in one section of the book, they talk about building classroom community through circles. They mentioned 4 of them. I think you can hand out the slides. Okay, so all of these circles, we are not going to have time to go into detail on what they are and how to use them, but I wanted you to at least have something in front of you so that you can have a guide to what I'm talking about. So the first type of circle is called a sequential circle. Very traditional. You sit in a circle. There's usually a talking stick, an object of some kind, and only the person who is holding the stick is allowed to talk. The idea in a sequential circle is that everybody gives input, but it is not a dialogue. So there's a set order to participate. Everybody's going to go around. Everybody's going to speak their piece. We're not engaging with each other. Now, if you want a different outcome, we have non-sequential circles. In a non-sequential circle, you don't use a talking stick, and participants are allowed to engage with each other. Then you get into more extreme versions. A fishbowl is where you have 2 circles, one inner circle and one outer circle. The inner circle engages in dialogue while the outer circle observes and takes notes. There is a hybrid where you can swap in and out. of the inner and outer circle so that the outer circle can participate. This kind of circle is good for hearing different viewpoints. But in the outer circle, if you have an issue that you're discussing, the inner circle will talk, the outer circle can listen, and then we can swap places. So we don't interact over the different viewpoints, but we are forced to listen. And then finally, you have one called the inside-outside circle. A little bit harder to figure out how this one would work. It's kind of like speed dating. So the circle on the inside rotates and every person engages with everybody else but one at a time. So lots of different options in circles, but what are the approaches and how does it apply to the scenario? That's what we kind of want you to discuss. How does circle, either if used at the beginning of the school year prior to this incident breaking out, or actually in a more realistic scenario, even after this incident has broken out, how could a classroom conversation around the root cause, not the incident, because as Wilson mentioned, we are not trying to put students on the spot and highlight them as something that happened, and have the class dialogue about that. You have to go deeper than that. What is at the root of what caused this issue? And I wrote down some things. Let's see if you guys are paying attention because I'm going to go out of order here. Some topics that can be discussed in circles, even if this is a math classroom. This is coming from a math teacher, y'all. I was a math teacher. How powerful would it be to discuss empathy and respectful dialogue? How powerful would it be to discuss a classroom culture of responsibility? How powerful would it be to discuss how we support learning in this space, or to talk about how different people learn differently? Or to actually engage in conflict resolution, to talk about how we engage when we disagree about something. The tough part about this is that teachers are very much here at Oak Park trying to figure out how to get through all their content in the course of the year. And the question is, when would we have time for this? The thesis of the book is that if you engage in circle culture from the very beginning of the school year, use the circle culture to set up your classroom, to talk about your norms, and to teach the kid that this is how we're going to engage. And if the kids do this in all their classes across the school, they learn how to have respectful dialogue, respectful disagreement, and to be more open to engaging when there's a concern. So the task is now to turn back to your scenarios and to try to imagine. I can give you a lot of information, ask you guys to take notes. But think about how classroom conversations, even over the course of time, over the course of the school year, could impact your scenario in the long term. Doesn't have to be the next day, we're gonna have a circle and we're gonna fix this problem. That is not what it is. And just really quickly, circles are actually intended to be used in non-conflict situations as well. Think about, we just took a test in an AP class to practice. And we're gonna have a circle to talk about the results and to have kids share with each other how they prepared or didn't prepare and what worked for them. And we have a dialogue about how we as a classroom learning community are moving towards being successful as a group on this AP test. The same setup, the same protocols as a circle can and should be used as a regular classroom tool so that when they happen around a behavior situation, it is not alien to the class, okay? Does anybody have any questions before we go back into the group? And do you want to add anything?
I was just gonna say, remember, one of our groups was in the hallway, so I just wanted to see if you wanted to give a suggestion for
And that's a touchy one. So that's one where you might consider if who needs to participate in this circle, okay? So sometimes it is just the students that were involved, but you can use their learning to help a larger community of kids get involved in that activity, having them decide how they're going to share what they learned or discuss, and disseminate that information in a wider way, or it could be bringing together other kids who are involved in similar scenarios who have learned similar lessons. So there's a lot of different ways. We're interested to hear how you think this tool could be used in each of your scenarios.
And I would just say, imagine that this was school-wide, that this was the culture we had. So don't imagine that students or adults wouldn't be used to circle when you're thinking your idea. in the perfect space, if they already were, how would you use it in this space? You're gonna have 10 more minutes to have this discussion. Okay, 7 minutes, on 7 time.
What are your thoughts? I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying about how the pros balance each other instead of it's like realizing it's a real goal and like if they said that and obviously COVID kind of sit down too, like it would be really helpful for them to realize like, oh, like we're not hitting each other. You know what I mean? Like they were both in the same situation. They both thought this way. And then the boy hearing how they both thought like that would be really nice, like some of like
Just be up for this last.
If you circle it, like circle is used throughout here. I do think that should, if you have that circle together.
Yeah.
it's hard though because like you just like hold around the class like that. And then also like, you know, it's sometimes it's helpful for people to like cool down a little bit, like you start with contemplation, like probably, I mean, obviously, I don't have like, I wouldn't try to do that often, but if I do, like, it's not like right after that immediately, I'm like, okay, let's like sit down and have a discussion about this, you know, like obviously like tensions are so high, like kind of like you can most like productive.
The problem is they're going out to the hallways.
This is not.
Yeah.
And like you said, they're being held up class, the teachers.
So I think.
Yeah.
I would.
But the point is.
First, if this was introduced to the classroom before this incident happened, I was having a circle about the impact of social media. Again, and I'm not in the school, and I was here. Imagine Instagram and Twitter were just starting, people were not weaponizing the way they are now. I think so to have conversations about like, hey, I get it, you're gonna use your phone, fine. However, at what point do you feel comfortable sharing, you know, this post would hurt me, or like, all these people are that are here to support you, just having all those discussions about that. Community expectation, hey, if you see something on social media that someone else posted, instead of talking to someone else about it, our classroom culture is waiting until this way time to talk about it. Just making that a part of classroom culture. So that when kids travel and able to get them, by the time we're in the cafeteria, you have 2 sets of classrooms that have already had community guidelines and with social media occurring, you know, we separated out this way versus waiting until we're in order, discussion. That's my first step. Preventing circles.
Yeah.
Right.
The second thing I would offer is having but having participated in verbal argument while I was here and also have seen them firsthand. To me, I think it's worth taking them once the cafeteria for lunch period and putting them there. Having that conversation. There's plenty of people here that can let us know, what's going next. Okay, send a message to the teacher. So and so is currently in peer mediation, or so and so is currently with this social worker counselor, whomever. They're gonna understand, but then of course, we have to go back to the teacher and give whatever we should see. But I'm thinking, when I've been in those situations, I just want to resolve it then. I've been waiting into the classroom, our period is over, I've been waiting to talk to you this period, now this time is here, I'm ready to get it out. If I have to wait until 6th period, 7th period, 8th period, I'm just getting 3 classes there. Then I wait till the school is out, now I have more people around to see my girl.
Yes.
It's not getting resolved, so I think sacrificing the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes for whole class period afterwards, just to have smaller circle or triangle between 3. It's more beneficial because we're not trying to dissipate the situation, we're trying to just dissolve it. Like, you say your piece, you talk, you say your piece, you talk, you do your piece, you talk. And the resolution is, none of y'all gave it. It was just on social media, and then you move on.
Who in their lunch room would be there
I
to
do like the.
pull that off, to pull them aside, who's, are there monitors, who's there?
Based on my experience, we had, security guards in the lunchroom, there were some teachers who would float around and they would say something or see something, or, you know, someone goes to the social security guard. Security guard and say, hey, I should pay this back and rowdy, and then it was kind of like brought the attention was brought there. I'm not sure what that kind of layout brought now, but that.
Yeah, they have some security guard. And there's like. Usually. We don't really have teachers in the room at all, but I'm sure.
My side, last thing. Are in the classroom that even if you have these, don't listen, they don't agree, I don't wanna, whatever. Having them in there to be their own they're more equipped, whether they be reported by the right? So that's another reason I think, especially if those who are having difficulty, social.
Things are just for whatever reason.
Like, this is like too touchy feely, like in the real world, this does not, like, if somebody's having conflict, they're not gonna want to see myself talk about it. Like, the only hope for something, and this is like part of, I think, a broader sort of council part, is that like, we do such a sort of sounds good on Thursday, like, we got kids, but they did, like, if somebody is having an issue on social media, just talk about it.
Yes, in seconds.
For me, this screams like students need training in conflict resolution. And I think that's gonna start 6 weeks, 6 months before. Then you can do that. Say, this is not, like, to me, that's not. Right, I mean, like.
So I know starting is such sweet sorrow, I do not give us deeply, so I'm gonna bring you all back together. So that we can get started on this part of the conversation. First and foremost, these are some very rich discussions, thank you, thank you, thank you. Before, and the ending of our sessions are always in circles, so we're going to do that just to reflect and do feedback on like this experience for you. But right now, each group has 2 minutes, and you don't have a full 2 minutes. Mr. Noreen told me to tell you 1.5 minutes, but 2 minutes to tell me how your conversation changed from what you were talking about and the things you spoke about before to what you did once you heard about Circle and like the possibilities of that in our community. And again, because I like to keep us guessing, I'm starting from the middle. Group 3 will get us started.
Me and my team, we kind of talked about how, at least in my experience, I feel like in my earlier years, I have had teachers talking about having at the beginning of class, kind of breaking us up into circles and having small groups discuss the norms and the things that are expected in the classroom. But at least in our scenario, with the student being disruptive, we think it could possibly be a matter of the teacher not following up on those ethics and those rules. Because in my experience, it's usually like a beginning of the year thing. And then after that, it's kind of like, well, look at the norms. There's no more discussion about it or change in them. If once students get more comfortable with each other, they kind of think more things should be added. There's never any talk about that. It's more just in the beginning, this is what we expect. And the teachers won't even like point to it, the specific norms that the students have created.
So reinforcement of the agreements, reinforcement throughout the year or throughout the semester. Thank you so much. Group 2 is next.
I'm not sure our conversation really changed, what we were initially talking about, but all of us were really, fascinated and so excited about these circles and what kind of work we can produce overall. especially, we all had like different ones that we liked and how, like with the fishbowl, people are in and out, so you're listening, observing, and also talking. Or with the sequential, you actually have to hear uncomfortable topics and be okay with it. And so we talked really about that above all. And what else did we? Yeah,
And you see circles being able to work for your conversation with your students
yeah,
proactively and retroactively within the.
for sure. I
Okay.
like how
Okay,
yeah, how it was like, let's make this normal, let's talk about it, studying for a test or behavior, or
Okay.
I make it all the topics. And I had to just quickly add, I have 2 sophomores and our kids teachers have done this year.
oh, okay, thank you. That's group 2, it's very excited about circles and then also seeing its possibilities proactively and retroactively when there's incidents. Group 4,
The thing I think I saw like change in our conversation was, at first we were just talking about what can be done like after the incident, and for reference, ours was about a student not complying with the phone home, when there was a substitute teacher. And a lot of what we were talking about was what can be done after, so like telling the teacher, pulling the student aside, things like that. But like with circles, it kind of opened my mind to things that can be done before to prevent the issue from happening. Because with like a circle, I was saying that like the first thing that came to mind is just that if you're talking more with your peers, you might be more interested instead of being on your phone, with talking with your peers instead. And that also, if a teacher is really involved in a circle, it helps to build a relationship with the student. And if the teacher has a strong relationship with the student, it can really help the sub out, because the teacher can, kind of say like, I'm gonna be gone tomorrow, there's gonna be a sub. For me, can you guys be respectful for the sub? And, since the students have a better relationship with the teacher, they respect them enough to take their word and treat the sub better. So I think really what it changed our conversation was not just thinking about what can be done after, but what can be done at the beginning of the year to prevent things like this.
awesome, so like setting a platform for what the things that we do, so your classroom becomes managed even in your absence by the things that your students have been taught. And not only in your classroom, but like throughout the building, like it's happening, so it's like the expectation and we know what goes on. I think of it almost like in middle school, like we just know how to line up and go to the restrooms and all, like I was just like, how's that? We practice it, we do it every time we leave room, so that's a practice I see us starting. Group number 1.
Oh, am I taking? Okay. Okay, so what was just mentioned was essentially the first idea that we had or approach was, if this is the classroom standard and if it reaches the cafeteria, then at least 2 separate classrooms have both set community standards of how you solve social media issues. So like if both classrooms agree when social media incidents occur, you just talk directly to that person in its own space, then it doesn't become including other people. However, at the end of our conversation, I think we kind of, and this is gonna sound bad, but wafted all the fairy dust out of the air and said, but when situations like our scenario has already extended, from the classroom to the cafeteria into the hallway, the likelihood of people wanting to sit down and have a circle after doing this is unlikely. But if it is, what kind of conversation do you have other than maybe using the sequential circle, like this one person talks, this one person talks, one person talks. But as far as getting a resolution, what are we telling our students by taking the time to say, when a social media incident occurs, this is how we solve it, instead of saying, this isn't even a big enough issue to be disrupting your educational experience. Am I missing anything?
I mean, I think that we felt that conflict resolution training was probably more essential, like that could be done in a circle, but that has to be done well before you ever get to the point of an actual incident. Like people have to learn how to de-escalate, and having someone sit in a circle, we just, Mainly I, but, we just did not think it was very realistic.
And this is conflict resolution for students?
No, I mean, I just think that like in general, people need to learn how to de-escalate things, right? Like you could almost present a scenario like this in a circle at the start of the year and almost like letting people see how ridiculous it is, like what would happen in a scenario. And then you can sort of like learn from that and be like, oh, like I would never do that if, I was, caught in a conflict like this. And so I think that like through that example, people could start to see that like, oh, it's ridiculous to have a conflict over, a boy dating two girls or something like that. But like at the point of the actual incident, people just flipping over chairs in the circle.
Thank you very much. I did hear one of your members talk about how this has been happening since the beginning of time. Oh, that was interesting, yes. Thank you very much. And my group 5.
We had a similar discussion, I guess, because this doesn't work, considering these are versing this kind of random students from random classes. The idea of sort of work grammatically, obviously teaching, empathy, talking about empathy, speaking about respect for people, whether you agree or disagree with, like, who they see themselves as people. It's just a simple empathy thing and a simple respect thing, so building that could help avoid that kind of conflict. But using a circle post-conflict, didn't sit right, especially considering I took the stance of putting, again, the minoritized group, the group that's harmed, at the center of any of these circles and making them then explain themselves and their pain and those kinds of things. Just doesn't sit right with me. So then post it was like an adult-led thing. Like we thought maybe I brought up an idea of a fishbowl of adults within the school community that would consider themselves a part of the LGBTQ plus community and explaining their kind of history with this and their having these lived experiences, because this is not a unique experience for anyone. Considering they're adults and things like that, they've grown past it, they've grown up, they've gotten over it, so that can be helpful for the kids who said these kinds of things to then hear what adults have to say about it. Like, these are experiences I had and this is how it made me feel. But again, that's still centering minoritized communities, and making them do the uplifting, but we're teachers in the building, we're adults, we would assume want to do that kind of thing and ensure that these kind of kids grow up to, be different, be better than what came before.
Thank you. And I have a question for you as my resident history teacher in the room, because I understand what you're saying in terms, and this is something that I battle in terms of doing restorative work, the willingness of individuals who want to restore, whether it's a circle, whether it's a conversation, mediate. Like I get a lot of people just want the other people to disappear. In history, are you aware of any oppressed persons whose oppressor led the revolution to change their condition?
No, but I am also of the stance that these are kids. And I don't like the idea of kids having to do this.
No.
And I also don't like seeing.
I literally wanted to know for myself if there had been one so that we could kind of like capitalize on that and like spread that.
Yeah.
Because as a person from a marginalized group, I have not experienced it. And I would want to be able to say, you shouldn't have to do it yourselves, because I believe that. I just don't know the how, because I don't have an example of like.
Well, I mean, considering the community where we're at, which champions the idea of like liberalism and things like that, I think it's very easy to flip the script and say, why don't you guys do the educating of yourselves, since you are so behind this idea of liberalism and uplifting and making great change. Why don't you do the work? Why do more marginalized communities need to talk about their oppression for you to see it? It has been in the news. You have seen these things, right? It is not my job to tell you about. It's not my job to stand in front of you and say, oh no, my oppression score is this amount, and now you should feel bad about yourself, because that just makes me feel really awkward to look around and have other people looking at me and pitying me. when in reality, you don't know anything about me as a person, but then we're making assumptions based on a questionnaire that gets pushed around to 80 other people in this training that we have to do, right? Like, it's not my job to wear my oppression on my sleeve.
Right. And I would say this to everyone as we think about these, because as we keep coming back each month, we're gonna have these, as I told you, very difficult conversations. There are no easy answers, and the people that it's happening to, even the fight, where it should be clear that he doesn't love either of you like that if he was, like, it means everything to the people in it. And so it's very hard to just, oh, don't see it like this, or why are you letting that upset you like that? It has true meaning. And so none of this is just lightly like, oh, just get over it. Like every scenario we gave you today means a lot to the people involved in it. And as David said earlier, we're just trying to have school. Like at the end of the day, we just would love to teach the reading, the writing, the arithmetic. Like that's all we're really trying to do. But then life gets in the way. And then life now comes with $800, $900 telephones that can tell you the world. And it's more titillating than what's going on in the space. And we have to kind of like work it all. And I don't know how to say whose job is it really and how do we figure that out? But think through that, because when we come back, we're going to be battling these things, and it can't just be suspend them or don't make them talk or somebody else is going to have to come in and save them. Like, we are the saving we're looking for, us. So this room is thinking of the ideas of how to do the saving so that we can go out and then teach the masses so that we can get the results we're looking for, because we deserve it. Because our children deserve it. And that's important for us to recognize. So I want you all to now gravitate toward the circle so we can wrap up in circle. Our wonderful board members are going to help us bring the circle.
So, I mean, I would just look at any kind of, champions, like any kind of civil rights. You're not necessarily.
Are you framing your scenario or can I take it?
Is benefiting from.
It's right behind you.
This.
Arrested and pulled off. That kind of gives out, he didn't have to do that, he knew, he saw the problem, and just said, let me hear it over here, and he saw it, and said, when you do something, right? But where this community that champions those ideas, do the, don't ask me to tell you how to do it. You should know how to do it.
When you're seeing potential people coming in.
Again, we wanted to say thank you for participating. I'm really hopeful that our visitors today make a decision to speak to that wonderful lady, Ms. Evans over there, and say that you would like to join us on a regular basis. So amazing to have students here, and I was again enthralled by what you said, because you all always bring such depth to conversations. In our circle today, we're going to do like 2-word feedback on today. Whatever 2 words, not 2 sentences, 2 words that you want to give on feedback for this experience and the work we're doing. And it can be whatever you want to. You could thanks.
I would say like current policies, I have to elaborate on that.
Say, other like educational. I think like deeper, like
Courageous empathy.
Positive discussion.
Excavate and nurture. Is knowledgeable, realism.
It's one word because Laura was in my group, inspiring. And board members brought it, I want to repeat what Linda said. The new folks who joined us for the first time tonight, so delighted that you're here, especially the students, and I so hope that you'll come back. All you need to do is email Ms. Evans, and let her know that you're joining us for the year. I hope that you will, because you already have contributed so much tonight, so I'd be here. So thank you. Say 5 words, and just say, yeah, let's say, yes. Nice to see more students.
Relevant and thought-provoking.
Fascinating and exciting. Only got the one, encouraging.
Difficult and motivational.
Impactfully necessary.
Trauma recognition. Thoughtful dialogue.
Cautiously optimistic.
Solution oriented.
Invigorating. Progress. And inspiring.
Richie Coors, thank you for your engagement.
We're on time. Thank you all so much. Okay, you'll be getting email from Ms. Evans for our next meeting. Continued conversation, and thank you so much for being brave and courageous in the conversation. Thank you.
I'm good.
Oh,
Yeah.
Would you like to adjourn the meeting, please?
official stuff.
Okay, any future agenda items? Next steps are we?
So we do. Sorry, we do this because Lisa kills it.
Yes, I will.
We will have similar topics, so I have them. We have the next 3 planned out. I will tell you that the next one has to do with gender-based bias, but I'm kind of holding them each month. So gender-based bias is next, for our next meeting.
Okay, we'll move to adjournment. I, Jonathan Livingston, move to adjourn the Culture, Climate, and Behavior Committee meeting at 6:45. 6:47.
7:45.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. 7:45. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Student custody, you all never fail to amaze me. Thank you.